around, it will be on the mild side, 12 to 15 or 16 Celsius as minimum temperatures. This is where they should be as maximum temperatures during the day. So cloudy start to Wednesday morning, showery outbreaks of rain pushing their way north and eastwards, most persistent and heavy across northern parts of Scotland. But it will brighten up as the morning progresses and into the afternoon. Yes, there will be a few showers around. It will be quite a blustery day, but it will be on the mild side. And that continues over the next few days. We'll see sunshine and showers across much of the country and temperatures remain well above average.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Rishi Sunak will meet the King tomorrow and become, yes, another Prime Minister. My big debate tonight is, can he hold the Red Wall, or is it goodbye Red Wall? Cross-channel migrants, 12 people get sent back to Albania. Is this the start of something bigger? I'm not so sure it is. We'll examine. And going into Talking Pints today, Harry Mount. He's an editor, a journalist, an author, and a man who's an enthusiast for Latin, a bit like Boris. All of that coming up. First, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening to you. So, Rishi Sunak will become the new Prime Minister of the UK tomorrow morning after Liz Truss chaired her final cabinet meeting in the morning and has visited the King at Buckingham Palace. Those are the cheers and claps of Tory MPs as Rishi Sunak arrived at Conservative Party headquarters earlier on today, where he spoke for the first time since becoming leader. He won the contest after Penny Mordaunt withdrew her candidacy earlier. In his statement, Mr Sunak warned the UK faces a profound economic challenge and said his priority would be to bring the party and the country together.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
Well, the Culture Secretary Michelle Donovan told GB News the party now needs to stand behind Rishi Sunak and help people get through the winter.
We're going to face some tough challenges. Nobody has been shy in acknowledging that, including Rishi himself. But his top priority, and the top priority of all Conservative members of Parliament, will be supporting people through this winter.
Meanwhile, Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, accused Rishi Sunak of not having a mandate or saying a single word about how he'll run the country.
Everybody who I've spoken to, the public have said we should be having a general election. There is no mandate now. The Conservatives have completely broken their promises, broke our economy, and now they want to see a general election. They can't just keep doling out prime ministers every month because they're in total chaos and they've lost control of the market and haven't got any ideas of how they're going to tackle the cost of living that people are facing.
Well, in other news, more than 70,000 staff members across 150 universities in the UK have voted to go on strike in a dispute over pay and conditions. The Universities and Colleges Employers Association proposed a pay increase of between 3 and 9% in May, but now the union wants the figure to take into account the cost of living. And Royal Mail workers will return to the picket line tomorrow, protesting outside sorting and delivery offices across the country. The Communication Workers Union says more strikes are planned in the coming weeks if efforts to reach a pay agreement fail. BT, Openreach employees and 999 call handlers walked off the job today over a similar dispute, with the CWU again demanding a proper pay rise that's in line with inflation. Those are your latest news headlines on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time to go back to Farage.
Good evening. We're about to get our third Prime Minister. Yes, Rishi Sunak will become our Prime Minister formally tomorrow. Our first Goldman Sachs former employee as Prime Minister, a globalist, if ever I saw one. But it was the Boris Johnson withdrawal last night that was so interesting. He claimed to have had 102 supporters, and you can believe that if you want to. I have to say I'm somewhat sceptical on the number. He then issued a statement, a 292-word statement, in which he used I 27 times and national interest just once. But did he, like the grand old Duke of York, march them up to the top of the hill and march them back down again? Well, Michael Fabricant, the Conservative Member of Parliament for Lichfield, was on GB News earlier today and was none too happy.
Bitterly disappointed, and I know that a number of people in his team not only feel disappointed, they feel betrayed, if I'm honest with you. They feel they've been led to the top of a hill, fighting for him, got that 100, went over 100, and now he stood down. Now, I understand his reasons, but this is the second time this has happened.
Yeah.
It happened in 2015.
Yeah.
And it might be hasta la vista, baby, but I don't know how many people would support him a third time round, if I'm honest. It's a great shame.
Well, that was it. You see, Boris out, and even his own supporters there, the most ardent supporters, not happy. So what do we make? What do we think of Rishi Sunak? Well, one thing's for certain, he's clever, he's well-educated, he's competent, he's calm, he's decent. All of those qualities apply. He is just 42 years old. He does not have a great experience of life, but he worked for Goldman Sachs and he worked for a hedge fund. And he is, of course, incredibly rich. He and his wife valued at about 700 million. Now, we should not dislike people because they happen to have much more money than we do. But I can see the Labour attacks. You know, he spends more heating his swimming pool at a time when people can't afford to heat their houses. But here's the problem, my problem with him. Number one, he genuinely is a globalist. He's put taxes up to the highest in 70 years. But number two, he just doesn't connect. He is dull as hell. See this clip from his acceptance speech today outside Conservative Central Office.
I pledge that I will serve you with integrity and humility, and I will work day in, day out to deliver for the British people.
Well, you know, I mean, surely you've just won the contest because the others have all dropped out. You're about to become the Prime Minister of this country. Is that the best you can do? Read in a wooden way off an auto cue. I mean, goodness gracious me. No passion, no humour, no feeling. And have a look at this sequence of clips of Rishi Sunak out meeting real people, and tell me whether you agree with me. He is incredibly awkward.
I have friends who are aristocrats, I have friends who are upper class, I have friends who are, you know, working class, but I'm not working class, but I mix and match, and then I go to see kids from an inner city state school and tell them, you know, to apply to Oxford and talk to them about people like me.
So I collect Coca-Cola things. Oh, for real? Yeah, I'm a Coke addict. Total Coke addict. Coca-Cola addict.
Yes. The sun has been shining, so much so that someone even said to me the other day, wow, you've got a great tan.
Together, scan them for me. Yeah, I know you ordered this, yeah. That's that one. And that one. That comes to 31.61. Perfect, thanks very much.
Bang on. Oh. Close enough, I'll let you off. There you go. I'll let you off. Good.
So trying to be a man of the people, but it doesn't really work somehow, does it? He is really, really awkward. And here's the acid test, OK? It's the red wall seats that the Conservatives need to hold if they're going to have a cat's chance in hell of saving the next election. Ask yourself a question. How would Rishi Sunak cope going into a working man's club in Doncaster? Well, let me tell you, I don't think he'd even walk through the door and certainly not be able to hold those people in conversation. He is not going to connect with the red wall. I think it's goodbye to the red wall with Rishi there in number 10. But give me your thoughts. Farage at gbnews.uk. Maybe you think I'm being unfair, but I think I've probably got the measure of this right. Now, last Thursday we were in Deal in Kent for the first of our GB News People's Forums. This Thursday we will be in Uxbridge, a significant constituency because, of course, it's the one that Boris Johnson represents. And just because Boris Johnson has had a tough year and a bad weekend, don't think this man doesn't harbour ambitions about coming back to be Prime Minister in the years to come, because he certainly will. We go to Uxbridge to test the temperature, to see how they feel about their MP, to assess whether he can hold a 7,000 majority, to see whether Keir Starmer is really sparking it in the streets of Uxbridge and what they think of Rishi. If you want to come along, and we were full house in Deals, if you want to come along, you better get in pretty damn quickly. gbnews.uk. Go to the website and you can register there and take part in our People's Forum. Well, joining me is GB News' political editor, been a busy man, Darren McCaffrey, over the last few weeks. To me, the word, I think, that stands out from today, from Rishi Sunak and from supporters of the Conservative Party, be it members of Parliament or, you know, newspapers that support the party, stability. He's going to be the man that brings back, after all this chaos and disaster, the man that brings back stability. Does that mean that no policies change?
Well, things are going to have to change. And this is the most remarkable thing. And they're going to have to be, what did Jeremy Hunt call them? Eye-watering decisions in the weeks to come. And that are going to provide anything but stability. Let's be honest about this. We're going to see strikes this autumn, I think almost irrespective of what happens. We're going to see lots of interest groups and people very concerned about cuts to departmental budgets. I think when he talks about stability, frankly, it's pretty much the main reason he's been elected. There is
because he's solid, sensible.
I mean, a bit like a speech, a bit wooden and wood solids.
I found that extraordinary.
Yeah.
He just won the contest.
Yeah, I mean, very odd. And actually, weirdly, he's much better dealing with questions, a bit more normal than in that sense. Maybe he's just a bit out of practice. I'm not entirely sure. You're right. It wasn't great. He's got another chance to do it in front of the big black door tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. But the markets, first of all. Clearly, there's a sense, I think, among Conservative MPs that he has already performed some type of stability. Sterling went up a little bit today, gilts fell, etc., etc. The Conservative Party, is it governable? Well, you know what? Frankly, he's actually done quite well in getting the numbers. I mean, there was a real sense of momentum over this weekend. He did blow Boris out of the water. I'm sorry to people who think he didn't, but he did. And actually, kind of rather conversely in some regards, I think Boris is kind of almost pantomime this weekend of travelling across, calling people up, trying to run a half, campaign, actually drove more people towards Rishi Sunak because they didn't want necessarily that circus back in town again, given where we are economically. But also he's going to have to provide stability to the country. And I say that because, a bit like Liz Truss, he does not have a personal mandate at all, really.
Which was Johnson's biggest, most powerful argument.
It was. I mean, and it was an argument that he used again this weekend. And, we live in a parliamentary democracy. The only people who voted for Boris Johnson were in Uxbridge. But there is clearly a case that Boris Johnson won the last election and his personal mandate was big. Rishi doesn't know any of that. And that will be an Achilles heel in the weeks and months to come. But as I say, this is going to be difficult. I mean, we talked, didn't we, Nigel, about 6-7 weeks ago, that Liz Truss faced one of the toughest in-trays of any Prime Minister in a generation, maybe since Thatcher back in 79. It is possible now, I think, to say, given what's happened over the last month or so, that Rishi Sunak faces the greatest in-tray maybe since 45. I mean, it really is. At every single turn, every department, there's a fire that he needs to get.
No, it's tough. And I'm thinking about party unity. Marc Francois from the European Research Group stood outside Parliament today reading out a statement that the European Research Group couldn't endorse either candidate.
Yeah. The One Nation Conservative group couldn't endorse the candidate. So you've got Nadine Dorries on Twitter essentially saying there needs to be a general election tomorrow because there's the Boris Johnson faction who will not be very happy that he's won.
But isn't the truth of it that the right of the party, or what's perceived these days to be the right, which means those that are Conservative and not Social Democrat, they're completely isolated now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they are. They're a bit leaderless, really. I mean, Suella Braverman and Kimi Badenoch rode in behind Rishi Sunak. And Rishi Sunak has always claimed he's a right-wing Conservative, a low-tax chancellor that he wanted to be, was unable to be. And the problem for him is, even if that was true, let's give him some slack and say that was true, and obviously the pandemic put that to a side, he's not going to be able to do that now anyway. He's going to have to come in, I think, if he wants to provide his stability to the market, and he is going to have to cut budgets. It's going to be austerity 2.0, largely, I think, to a degree, whether you like that or not.
Yeah.
And also, taxes may also have to go up. And is that a Conservative agenda? But at the same time, the problem for the Conservative Party is those on the right of the party, frankly, have got no one else to blame but themselves. They had an opportunity, they had a leader, and they blew it in the space of 6 weeks, quite incredibly, I would suggest.
And on Brexit, I mean, Sunak claims to be a Brexiteer, but I never saw him engaged in the campaign at all, anywhere. I understand there's one online video that no one saw of him walking around a farm. He's not really a Brexiteer, is he?
Well, I'm not sure about this. First of all, I mean, he was a very junior MP, and he did come out for Brexit, which I would have thought, given he was new and the machinery of government was very much, you need to row into line here and support Remain. But yes, we don't really... I mean, this is the most extraordinary thing. He's a very well-known politician. But actually, we don't know really lots and lots of his actually political philosophy beyond what he says. And this will be tested, I think, really tested. Now, he clearly showed a little bit of ankle, I think, to the ERG today about the Northern Ireland Protocol. Again, that's pretty tricky, though. We're going to see what happens there. Another big challenge, Rwanda. Immigration, the English
Well, I mean,
crisis.
this is very interesting. I've got Sue Reid on, from Daily Mail, who's been writing about the Albanian gangs, etc. I'm going to go through that with her, because in the September... Because, hey, he was a loser in September and a winner in October, but in September he laid out some very specific plans on Rwanda. But was that for the last leadership run or for this one?
Well, there's a big problem. We know that the airline that was meant to operate it now has cancelled that contract. And, none of this, what I'm saying is none of this is easy. None of it's going to be easy when they are going to be a long way behind in the polls. All I would say, though, is I think he is a formidable politician. I think he will, unite the party in a way that I think Boris Johnson and certainly Liz Truss has been unable to do to a large degree. We'll see how long that holds for, but I think he will have a little bit of a honeymoon period. And also, I think, interestingly, he will claw back some of the support, I think, that they've lost to Labour. As you say, there's been no great love for Keir Starmer. The big swing in the polls has been driven by an anti-Conservative agenda. I think he will be good at the dispatch box against Keir Starmer. I think both of them might be a little bit dull. Maybe it's what the public want.
It's not going to be giddy a minute stuff, is it?
It's really not. But at the same time, his forensic ability and his ability to get on top of subjects, it will match Keir Starmer's to a degree. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But in the end, this is going to be a really, really big moment for the Conservative Party because they need to get this right, or they are, on a very, very slippery slope towards the next
Darren
election.
McCaffrey, thank you. Let's go to College Green and let's speak to a Rishi Sunak supporter, Anna Firth, Conservative Member of Parliament for South End West. So, Anna, is it celebration tonight or simply relief?
I think a bit of both, actually, Nigel. I mean, I think a lot of relief that we have got a calm, confident and clearly competent Prime Minister in Rishi Sunak. And he addressed the 1922 committee today. I was there. It's very clear he is going to stick to the 2019 manifesto, which of course he helped write. So we're sticking with levelling up, strong NHS, better schools, safer streets, and all the things that we Conservatives stood on in 2019. Not me, of course. I was elected, as you know, in February of this year.
No, I know, absolutely. Stability, the same policies, some would argue the same failed policies, just more of the same. But here's my point, Anna. You're representing Southend. You've got a lot of people down in Southend who come from East London, would have strong working class roots. And I wonder, this guy who, clever though he is, and I fully accept that, but socially appears to be very, very awkward when he's out with the public, how on earth is he going to connect with working class Britain, not just in Southend, but in the Red Wall in particular? This guy just cannot connect with the working classes, can he?
Well, I don't think that's true, Nigel. I mean, you've seen from the lists of supporters the number of Red Wall MPs that actually supported Rishi Sunak, and they've supported him because on conducting polling in their own seats, they found that he is popular because his measures to deal with the cost of living are going to help people, whether they're in the Red Wall, whether they're in Chatham, or whether they're in Southend or in the South West. And the package of support that he put in place for furlough, which we know has helped 14.5 million jobs, a package of £80 million for businesses, the £37.5 billion support package that he rolled out in the spring. This is helping real people with their bills right now. So yes, he's a rich guy, but he's shown that he can actually deliver and help working class people.
All right, Anna Firth, you've made the case and made it with great passion. Thank you for coming on and joining me this evening. So there you have it. There's the case for Rishi Sunak. Anna Firth clearly absolutely believes in it. I do not think this guy connects in the Red Wall at all. Let me know your thoughts, Farage at gbnews.uk. In a moment, we will talk about deportations. 12 people have gone to Albania. Is this simply a drop in the ocean or the beginning of something that could be really interesting? Back with you in 2 minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So your thoughts on Rishi Sunak and the Red Wall? I think the Red Wall will go under Sunak. Dave says, I live in a Red Wall seat. I voted for Boris. He connected with people here and they loved him. Sunak will not connect in the same way. No, I don't think he will. Kevin says, probably, although he's got 2 years to turn things around and try to deliver what they voted the Tories in for. Well, yes, but against the current financial crisis, that will not be easy. Alex says, I can't see Rishi in a working man's club in a Yorkshire mining town sipping a bitter and talking about rugby league. Well, he wouldn't have a bitter, he doesn't drink. But no, listen, I get it, folks. I just don't think this guy can connect, will connect in those Red Wall seats. And finally, what won the Red Wall last time? Brexit, Corbyn and levelling up. Brexit has been done. Corbyn's gone, and there won't be any more money left to level up. Mortgages, energy bills are through the roof, and Partygate left a sour taste in many people's mouths. So it's goodbye. And I do sometimes think, you know, when we look at those Red Wall victories for the Conservatives, and I knew a lot of those voters because most of them had come through UKIP and the Brexit Party. I was like a gateway drug through to Boris's big victory. But the other thing was underestimated is that Jeremy Corbyn was deeply unpopular in many of these very, very patriotic Midlands and northern towns. And Keir Starmer may be very boring, but he's not seen to be anti-British in the way that Corbyn was. Now, let's get back to the channel. It's been a very busy weekend. I can show you a series of the latest social media clips that are being posted by the Albanian gangs on TikTok and elsewhere. And they're not apologising in any way at all. They show pictures here of this is the Serbia to Austria route, people being smuggled in through vans. As you would expect, 90% young men. And actually, you know, the gangs are boasting about the routes that they're taking, boasting that there's no fence, no border wall, no external EU barrier that is actually any obstacle to these people at all. They boast of the different nationalities they're bringing in to the United Kingdom. And as fast as TikTok closed these accounts down, new ones get set up, new ones get opened. We see pictures of them crossing the channel, everybody looking very jolly, very happy, a calm day, the engine working, the symbol they make, the symbol, the two-fingered symbol. And here's somebody we just saw on that boat, practicing with guns, living it up in nightclubs, got oodles of cash, which is very clearly from the drugs trade, and a very, very sinister last picture of this particular individual holding what looks like a Glock pistol, and again, making that symbol of the Albanian drugs gangs. And I can tell you, we've seen in the last few weeks and months, we've seen young men walking up the gangplank at Dover, making that gang symbol. Yesterday, there were two boats that landed on a beach at a place called Aycliffe, just along the road from Dover. About 80 people escaped off into the Kent countryside. For all we know, about 60 have been rounded up. In one case, a woman had her back door open. It was a lovely Sunday morning, and one of these young men walked in and asked to use the telephone. So the residents of Kent, as you would expect, clearly very, very unhappy. But maybe there's some good news. And the Special Investigations Editor of the Daily Mail, Sue Reed, is with me. Sue, I think you've spent as much time covering this subject as I have. So there's a glimmer of hope when Suella Braverman was there. We did manage to get some people, according to your article in today's Mail, deported.
Suella Braverman actually did very well. It may well have been the land might have been the plan might have been laid by Priti Patel, but it was under Suella Braverman's watch. Mm-hmm. and they managed to get 12 people out. They were young men. I've met them. I met them in Albania last week. They were wanting to come here as economic migrants. They didn't claim asylum at the processing centre. They were then taken to one side, taken to a plane, one in each of 12 vans, security vans. So it was a very good, meticulous operation, and you take your hat off to the Home Office for doing it. But, of course, as people will say, only 12?
So if they claimed asylum, would they not have been deported?
They could not have been deported.
But hang on a second. Albania is a NATO member, an EU applicant country.
They haven't had a war for 25 years.
No war for a quarter of a century. Plus, Brits go there. There are adverts in the Sunday newspapers to go and visit resorts in Albania. How on earth could anybody from Albania claim refugee status?
Well, they do, because they think it's the way to get in. But I think the beach landings yesterday, are very significant, because I think the Albanians have realised that they don't want to, go to a processing centre that we know is now overcrowded.
This is Manston.
Manston, it's the first point after... You come into Dover, you have initial processing, then go to Manston. There are now over 3,000 there, and it's meant to have 1,200. There's diphtheria there. I've been told there's also tuberculosis. They're overcrowded. I've been told today that they deliberately make it a hostile environment. So who wants to go there? So what do the traffickers do, or the Albanians? They come to the beaches instead. And that is what happened yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my fear is they might start coming through the night, which would make them even harder to detect than perhaps they are on a misty day at sea now. So 10,000 Albanians, we estimate, have come in the last few months. 12 have been deported. So there's no good news here at all, really, is there?
Well, there is, because it shows it can be done with the will to do it. And that is important. It's a chink in the armour. And, of course, it's, the worst thing about what's happening is that the world is, the UK politicians are ignoring this. And I come from the north of England, as you know, and I can tell you that it is a huge problem for people in the north of England.
The politicians are ignoring it. Rishi mentioned it in the previous campaign, but not in this one at all. So he'll say there are no outstanding promises. Let me ask you something. As someone that's worked in British media for many, many years, why are so few in the media covering this?
Look, I know quite a lot of people in Fleet Street on different papers. There is definitely a move to silence journalists on this, particularly by the lawyers. They will not allow free debate, and responses to articles are cut off. And it is incredibly serious for free speech.
Well, Sue Reid, you're going to go on battling away.
I will.
On this subject. We're going to go on battling away here at GB News on this subject, and maybe in the end we'll do some good. Thank you for coming in and for joining me. Now, moving on. We've been talking earlier today about the absolute chaos of our democracy. But have a look at this scene from China just a couple of days ago. Yes, President Xi now in for a third term, probably in for life. Have a look at how his predecessor, President Hu, was treated. And those watching this on television can see the 79-year-old, looking dazed and confused, is led out of the auditorium. He's sitting next to President Xi, and it really looks the most unpleasant Stalinist-type purge. The current president doesn't even look at the ex-president as he's escorted away. And the reason's all too obvious, and that is because the former Chinese president was not expansionist, was not aggressive in any way at all. It was all about China and China first. This president, of course, we know, is far more dangerous. So however awful you think our democracy may be, however chaotic it is, it's a blooming sight better than living in totalitarian China. A point worth making. EasyJet, gosh, they're clever, aren't they? EasyJet are now advertising you can go away on a 28-day, all-inclusive trip, and it's going to cost you 650 quid. They estimate that's cheaper than being at home during the winter with the kettle on, with the heating on, and I think it's quite good advertising, and quite a lot of people may take it up. Now, we've been obsessed, haven't we, by the Conservative Party psychodrama that's been playing out, and frankly, playing out for much of this year. I think far too little has been said about Sir Keir Starmer, other than he's a bit dull. Gosh, PMQs with him against Rishi is not exactly going to be box office. But it is important that we examine some of the things that Keir Starmer stands for. Well, earlier on today, he appeared with Nick Ferrari on the LBC Breakfast programme. There was a phone-in from members of the public, and the question came up about the comedian Eddie Izzard. Now, Eddie Izzard, I think now describes as a woman, wants to become a Labour MP at the next election. Listen to this exchange with Sir Keir Starmer.
I'm not going to discuss individual cases. I know Rosie Duffield's position. My position is, as I've set out, as I say, for 99.9% of women, it's a matter of biology. I completely support that. There is a small percentage
so Eddie Izzard could qualify in your
struggle with their gender.
Indeed, of course.
And I'm not going to simply put that on one side. They are...
No, indeed.
And ignore that.
But Eddie Izzard could sit on an all-woman shortlist.
Well, Nick, I'm not going to discuss individual cases.
You just won't give me a comment on that?
I'm not going to discuss individual cases.
On that show, he was asked, what is a woman? And didn't have an answer for it. And the Labour Party are absolutely tying themselves in knots over issues like trans rights. Rosie Duffield, one of their MPs, could even be standing down because when she speaks up as she sees it for the rights of women, she gets so horribly bullied. And that shows you that Keir Starmer himself is absolutely stuck in North London and, again, doesn't really connect with those Red Wall voters, but those Red Wall voters having family histories of voting Labour, and they switched. And they'll see it in their minds, they switched because of Brexit, not because they liked the Conservative Party. So I think right now, with Rishi Sunak versus Keir Starmer, a general election in a couple of weeks' time would have the lowest turnout of modern times. Here's the other odd thing. The Liberal Democrats have not managed to bounce in the polls at all. Consider. So more of your thoughts on Rishi Sunak and the Red Wall. Is it goodbye to the Red Wall? One viewer says, more likely hello to communism. Well, I don't know about communism, but let's say more state control, more taxes at every level, regardless of which party is in. Another says, sad day for UK politics. No Northerner will vote for him. Might as well hand the government over to Labour. Now, Kat says it's goodbye Conservatives. Another says 100% it's gone. So will the South East to the Lib Dems. Well, we'll see. You're all making your predictions, but a lot of you agreeing with me that Rishi Sunak is not the man to connect with the Red Wall. I think this will prove to be a disaster. Well, in a moment, I'll talk to somebody whose family have been involved in Conservative politics. He himself, journalist, editor, author, and someone who thinks we should all speak Latin and learn a lot more about Latin. We'll find out why from Harry Mount in Talking Pints in just a moment.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's been another dramatic day at Westminster. The bars in that building behind me will be absolutely heaving with MPs, journalists, assistants. Well, Harry Mount and I thought we'd join them on this side of the river. Harry, welcome.
Cheers.
To Talking Pints. Very good to see you. Now, you are, I guess, an aristocrat.
I wouldn't say
well,
so.
I think you are. You know,
yeah.
Public school boy, writer, editor, author. Relation of David Cameron.
That's all true.
Amongst many things.
Yeah.
But your biggest sin, the thing for which you must never be forgiven, is that you were a member of the Bullingdon Club.
That is true. Deeply shaming, yeah.
Now, so much. We've seen those pictures of Osborne, Cameron, Boris, dressed up in the rig, in the buller. There you are at Oxford University. How do you get invited into this club?
Well, you're right. You're asked, so you can't apply.
Yeah.
And so you're normally asked by somebody in the year above. And the funny thing is, until those pictures of first Cameron and then Osborne appeared, it had been largely forgotten that it had been going for, I can't remember, 150 years or so.
Yep.
And people, when I was at Oxford, hadn't really even heard of it. I had heard of it, but it wasn't that well known. Then when Cameron became Tory leader, opposition leader in 2005, those pictures appeared. And it was like belonging to an evil cult.
Now, tell us about some of your experiences in the Bullingdon Club.
Well, actually, it really, I promise you, it wasn't that dramatic. Essentially, the Bullingdon began as a sporting club, a cricket club and a point-to-point club. It's named after a little village called Bullingdon outside Oxford.
I know it, yeah.
And there's a point-to-point there, still is. And it began as a sporting club with drinking attached. It turned into more of a drinking club with sports attached, so the club still went to the point-to-point. So I promise you, it really wasn't that dramatic. It's what a lot of undergraduates or young people would do. They got together and had too much to drink. But the fatal thing is wearing those silly clothes and having that group photo. And so the combination of those things, and I realised it's deeply, deeply embarrassing. It gave the impression we're dressed in those things every single day of the year.
Oh, didn't you?
No. In fact, I'd only met twice a year, and only on one of those days did you put on the stupid clothes. But I freely admit it's a deeply embarrassing institution, but its effect is greater than the actual amount of time you spent doing all that silly stuff.
And some of the odd things you got involved in, being rolled down hills and various things.
I wrote about that, so I must hold my hands up. I was at one of these meetings, and I was in a Waterloo, and someone rolled me down the hill. Deep embarrassment.
No, I think it's funny, but Harry, none of this, of course, has stopped you, and you've had successful career as a journalist. You've written for the Specky, the Evening Standard, the Mail, the Telegraph, and you've, quite prolific actually in the work that you turn out. Telegraph, you were on the sort of editorial side of the Telegraph for some time, and one of the comparisons, I guess, with you and Boris Johnson is that Boris, of course, attached to the Telegraph, wrote for the Telegraph for, 30-odd years, I guess, on and off. And you used to work directly with him, didn't you? He would submit copy to you. And what's he like to work with?
Well, as you know, Nigel, in the flesh, he's incredibly friendly and charming. And for 5 years, I edited his copy, although it didn't need any editing. Came in, worked perfect.
Yeah. He's a good writer, isn't he?
He's a very good writer and knows his grammar, not a single mistake. Yeah. But all the other columnists would deliver their columns by 4 o'clock was their deadline. Boris, because he's always a special case, delivered his at 7 o'clock, except he didn't deliver it at 7.
So you're right on deadline?
Yeah. But he very often didn't deliver it at 7. So at 1 minute past 7, I'd ring him up, and he's very good at saying sorry, and he'd say, I'm really sorry. I've just sent it. It's going down those jolly old copper wires of the internet. And you could hear him in the background typing away. So it's the first sign of him having a difficult relationship with the truth. But at the same time, it was hard not to like him, and I did like him, and I do like him. But I think that relationship with the truth is fundamental in his downfall.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, I think we're prepared, I think the British public are prepared to forgive him more than they would forgive most people. But there comes a point, doesn't there, when people start to say, you know what, enough's enough. And he's still got some passionate supporters out there, particularly in the Red Wall, as I've been discussing earlier. But he's also cheesed off a pretty big chunk of them as well.
And this weekend could be the death knell for his political career. Never, ever write him off. But as you said earlier on this programme, when he said he had 102 supporters, I think that relationship with the truth might be cropping up again. And the other thing he's got, which is nice in his character, he's very undictatorial. He doesn't like telling people off. But I think one of the main reasons he had his downfall was his inability to tell people off. So with Owen Paterson, he should have sacked him earlier. With Partygate, he should have clamped down on it. He's not somebody who wants to stop people having a drink, but he should have clamped down on it. And with Chris Pincher, he should have clamped down on it. And so that, in combination with his inability to tell the truth, was his downfall. So he is very clever. He was this really good columnist. I thought he'd be a good Prime Minister. I was wrong. Those fundamental flaws in his character defeated that great intelligence.
This matters to you. I mean, your father worked with Margaret Thatcher.
That's right, yeah.
Which really important. And I love that story of, you going and as a young boy and meeting Thatcher.
At age 11, when my dad was the head of Maggie's policy unit, there was a party in Downing Street for Trooping the Colour. And I, as a little boy, and my sister went round asking people for all their autographs. So got Maggie's autograph. There she was, doling out the coronation chicken. Got Cecil Parkinson's autograph, white as a sheet, because I didn't know, but he just had to confess to Maggie about Sarah Keyes. And I went up to Dennis Thatcher and got his autograph, and I said, do you think I could get your son Mark Thatcher's autograph? And he said, well, you can ask him, but the boy can barely write.
It was
fantastic.
Wonderful sense of humour that Dennis Thatcher had. As somebody, the Conservative Party, huge part of your life, the whole of your life, it's been there. Rishi Sunak takes over today. I mean, there's barely a Conservative policy in sight, is there? It's social democracy that's taken it over.
Yeah, but at the same time, and I think we may disagree here, I thought it was a rare example of the Tory party, for the first time in several years, being sensible. Rishi is the sensible option. Boris, for the reasons I said, couldn't do it.
No.
Liz Truss was a complete embarrassment, wasn't she? And I think I've met Rishi very briefly once, but I think he's an intelligent man. I think he is a decent man. It's not his fault that he's married a billionaireess, is it? So I think he's the best bet. As you said earlier on,
Is he conservative? And look what he's done. Taxes up, the state gets ever bigger, the party becomes one based on redistribution rather than wealth creation. The assault on the self-employed. And there really is an assault on the self-employed and small business company owners. What are they doing?
Well, as we saw with the Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng budget, it's almost impossible to go against that flow towards a globalist, high-tax country, isn't it? And I think they did it very clumsily, Kwasi Kwarteng. And Liz Truss, I agree with you. I wish the state was smaller. I'd have thought, I don't know, but in his heart of hearts, Rishi Sunak would agree. But the difficulty is to be someone like Maggie Thatcher and do unpopular things and still win elections.
Have a united party behind you in the House of Commons, you can do it. Now, the other thing, Harry, that's interesting is, you know, you're on the House of Lords Appointments Commission. I mean, the fact that Liz Truss will be able to appoint members of the House of Lords, doesn't it show us what a farce that House has now become?
Yes, you may not know, Nigel, but I resigned from that commission.
But you accepted the position.
I did accept it initially, and it was entirely my fault. I didn't realise, actually, quite how limited in its powers House of Lords Appointment Commission is. It's not its fault, it's my fault for not realising that. So I thought I'd be in this grand position of stopping people I thought was unsuitable and proposing suitable people. That actually wasn't my job. But anyway, so I then resigned very shortly after accepting the job, so it was silly of me. But at the same time, I think it's extraordinary that Liz Truss should have the right, or if she's got the right, she should really not take the 115 grand a year allowance, and she shouldn't hand
No,
out
I
those
couldn't agree
peerages.
more.
But who knows? She may be decent on those.
Well, she might surprise us. We won't prejudge it. Back to writing and editing. The oldie. The oldie. Now, I bet there are some people watching and listening that know the oldie, but plenty that don't.
Yeah.
You know, Richard Ingram's, who, of course, helped set up Private Eye in the very beginning, set up the oldie 30 years ago.
That's right,
and it's still going.
Yeah, and doing very well.
I've been to a couple of the lunches, and they're very, very jolly.
Well, they are very jolly. One of the things we do, we have a literary lunch once every month. 3 speakers who've written a recent book, and the Stroke of Genius by Richard Ingrams and the publisher, James Pembroke, was limiting the speakers to 10 minutes each, because we all know people who can go on for too long. So they really have to edit their speeches beautifully. They take place at lunchtime, and the older crowd who come to these lunches, they're the last people who, A, get stuck into the booze because they haven't got anywhere to go in the afternoon and tend to be retired. But also the wonderful thing about them and the readers of the oldie is they're unshockable in this culture where we read the whole time about people being cancelled. There are little areas where you're completely free.
And actually, the oldie, if you read the oldie, it's pushing the boundaries of free speech debate in a way that very few other people can.
Yes, I'm so pleased to have Barry Humphries, the great Barry Humphries, the economist. And very often he invites his Australian friend, Sir Les Patterson, to write a column. And Sir Les says some completely outrageous things. Perhaps because he's not a real person. I don't know if that's true or not.
It makes
but
it
he
easier.
can get away with things because he's a fictional character.
Now, what is the obsession with you guys? You incredibly posh, bright guys.
Yeah.
With Latin, speaking Latin. Boris loves to speak Latin. You've just got this, and you've written many books, but Et tu, Brute is out, and I've had a flick through, the best Latin lines ever, and many of them, actually, we do use in relatively common parlance. But most folk out there have never studied Latin. Why is the language relevant?
Because it is the fundamental root of Western European civilization. It's the fundamental ancient language, slightly more so with Romance languages like Latin and Spanish and French, but still today, in the English language, 2/3 of the words we speak are either Latin or Greek in their roots. But if you move beyond the language, take, for example, the reason why we're here with that lovely view of the Thames behind you, it's entirely because the Romans in 43 AD came up just where London Bridge is, which is the furthest east you could go and ford the river. That's why they set up Londinium in 43 AD. That's why Parliament is there. That's why you have that view behind you. And over again, comedy, philosophy, architecture, tragedy, often the Greeks first, but the Romans...
Should Latin be taught in schools?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I say in that book, it's really upsetting that it's considered a posh language, because until the 60s and the beginning of the end of grammar schools, it was a language that was taught in a very widespread way across Britain, getting rid of the grammar schools, and because of people thinking of it as elitist language, it's been increasingly marginalised. So now the prophecy has been fulfilled. It is, at its most rigorous way of being taught, more and more restricted to public schools and a few remaining grammar schools. So people think it is a posh language, but actually It's so incredibly important, as I say, to the roots of civilization, to the roots of our language. And the Romans, when they spoke it, they weren't saying posh things in Latin. They were betting on Ben-Hur and the 330 in Latin. There's some very rude graffiti.
I know. I'm going to read it all, cover to cover.
Yes.
Harry Mount, pleasure to have you on Talking Pints. Thank you. OK, I have a couple of minutes left for Barrage the Farage. Your questions coming in. Michael asks, can Sunak turn things around for the Tories? A little bit, but nowhere near enough, would be my view. What would you say, Harry?
I think he can. I think he could stop the rot.
You see, these Tories, their optimism, you've got to admire it. You really have got to admire it. Ryan asks, the next general election will be the first one that I can vote in. But why should I bother? If I vote Conservative, I get mass uncontrolled immigration and high taxes. If I vote Labour, I get exactly the same. Ryan, I agree with you. We're back to that period. You can't put a cigarette paper between them. There is very little to choose. Is there, Harry?
I would say there'd be a marginally smaller state under the Tories.
Marginally? What sort of 0.01%?
Well, it's enormous at the moment, isn't it?
But really, the differences aren't very big, are they?
No, they're not. But there are some differences.
I didn't say there weren't any differences. I just said they were very, very small. Jamie asks, isn't Sunak predominantly responsible for the UK's enormous current COVID debt situation? Look, yes is the answer to that. However, the British government decided to go for lockdown. Not just once, but more than once. We could have gone along the model of Sweden. We could have gone along the model of Ron DeSantis' Sweden. We can't actually blame Rishi Sunak himself for this. This was a government decision led by the Prime Minister and in common with most other governments in the world, all of which goes to show when there's consensus amongst global government, they nearly always get it wrong. It's why I'm not a globalist. I'm done for today. Remember, if you want to come to Uxbridge on Thursday, gbnews.uk. But I'm now going to hand you over to Mark Stein.
Thank you, Nigel. Great show, and I am with Ryan and Jamie. That guy Ryan, we should see if we can get him to run for the Tory leadership next time, which will be coming up in about 20 minutes. Rishi Sunak is the new Prime Minister. He's this week's Prime Minister. We shall break that down, but politicians only matter if politics matter, and as Ryan said, right now, everybody agrees on all the policies. Why is that? We're going to talk about that. We've got a great lineup of guests, starting with Toby Young and Patrick O'Flynn, and it all starts right after the weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Next few days stays very similar. Further sunny spells, scattered showers and exceptionally mild for the time of year too. Looking at the pressure pattern, well, very similar to what it has been. Low pressure remains in charge, sat just to the west of the UK, meaning strongest winds, outbreaks of rain more likely in the west, some drier interludes, particularly in the east. Through the rest of Monday into the early hours of Tuesday morning, there will be a few showers around, though most places will stay dry and we'll see plenty of clear spells developing. Under these clear spells, it will start to turn a little chillier than it has done of late, temperatures dipping into single figures. But that means quite a dry start, a bright start to the day on Tuesday morning, plenty of sunny spells, but there will be showers from the word go. They will continue on and off through the day, but a lot of places staying dry. However, later on in the day, particularly through the afternoon, evening time, outbreaks of rain will arrive across parts of Cornwall, Devon and later southwest Wales. Turning quite windy here. Elsewhere, winds coming in from the south are drawing in quite warm air, highs of 18 or 19 Celsius. Definitely the theme of October. Through the evening time, we'll see that rain push northwards through the Irish Sea, affecting parts of Wales, then later Northern Ireland and into the early hours southern parts of Scotland, clouding over across much of the UK as the night progresses. And temperatures, well, with a lot of cloud around, it will be on the mild side, 12 to 15 or 16 Celsius as minimum temperatures. This is where they should be as maximum temperatures during the day. So cloudy start to Wednesday morning, showery outbreaks of rain pushing their way north and eastwards, most persistent and heavy across northern parts of Scotland. But it will brighten up as the morning progresses and into the afternoon. Yes, there will be a few showers around. It will be quite a blustery day, but it will be on the mild side. And that continues over the next few days. We'll see sunshine and showers across much of the country, and temperatures remain well above average.
The People's Forum this Thursday is coming to Uxbridge in West London. Yep, that's right, it's Boris Johnson's constituency. We want to find out, what do you think about Boris pulling out of the race? Do you think he'll hold the seat of Uxbridge? Will he even stand in Uxbridge? Is Rishi connecting with you? And what about Keir Starmer? If you want to come along, join the People's Forum, give us your view this Thursday evening. Please go to gbnews.uk.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.